Good morning, everyone. I was just blown away by the last speaker and I was just busy writing notes. So, if I was to summarize my quick chat with you guys today, my story is about self mastery. I don't have any slides, and I just decided I was just going to come and speak from the heart. And if I speak from the heart, I think it for me, it also links to what she was talking about storytelling. Because when you tell a story, sometimes it resonates with people in a way that I suppose academic stuff potentially wouldn't, and that's potentially not my gifting. So, like I said, I'm Leah Chilengwe. My background is that I've worked and still do at director levels across organizations, public sector organizations in the United Kingdom. My specialty is procurement and contracts and performance, working within organizations to implement smarter procurement principles and contracts for the benefit of financial efficiencies and outcomes. It's a mouthful. It sounds like I'm really more clever than I am, but really, I just do the same thing for different organizations every single day. And when I'm doing my coaching, I tell people it's like shopping. Women, we like shopping. So it's like shopping. So trying to get a best bargain for people, but mostly on an organizational level. I'm also a founder of Life with Leah, which is business and life coaching and mentoring in the UK. You can find me on Life with Leah on Twitter, Life with Leah on Instagram, Life with Leah on Facebook. So it's very simple. Life with Leah on YouTube. I've got some videos on there as well. And really, Life with Leah was born out of my own experiences in rising into seniority into the organizations of the United Kingdom as a migrant woman. I'm also a two-time author of two books. The first one is called All Grown Up, and the subtext is overlooked, undervalued, and underestimated. That gives you a clue. And my second book is called Lids. And again, it gives you another clue, Cracking a Glass Ceiling. Both of these books are really my own story, how I've overcome, because that's how I feel that I can just convey it to people. How did I get here? So nearly 20 years ago, it tells you guys a bit about my age. I was a PA in an organization which shall remain nameless. I worked mainly taking notes, making teas, help making my boss be a little bit more comfortable. And I saw many opportunities pass me by. You know, you worked really hard and you see many opportunities pass you by, despite you demonstrating great work ethics and commitment. I saw people who I knew I could wipe the floor with, be given opportunities I knew that I had, demonstrate the abilities. And it was clear for me that it didn't matter how much I executed what I needed to do excellently, there was something else I needed to do. It was then that I understood that the door before me, perhaps, I wasn't waiting for that door to open for me, but it was then that I understood that the door before me, I wasn't waiting for that door to open for me, that for me, I needed a different strategy as a migrant woman in the space that I was operating. So you see, I'll use this word loosely, but there's always a lazy leader in every organization. It doesn't matter whether they're migrant or not. And I latched on to a lazy leader. What I did was I asked to assist them, to do work that they didn't want to do. And for me, it didn't really matter whether they took credit or not. A lot of people said to me, well, why are you letting this person do this? You're not even getting paid or recognition for it. For me, my immediate recompense and recognition was not what I was after. I was building a launch pad. It's not very nice, actually, not to be recognized. But if you see a better goal or a higher goal, then it makes it a little bit a better bitter pill to swallow if you know where you're going. I can tell you loads of horror stories in that place, but this is not why we're here. This is not a pity party. This is about empowering ourselves and self-mastery in order to understand that whatever we have inside of us, we can achieve it. And I know that Prof talked about policies and structures helping us, but actually I do completely agree. But for me, I think my story was I wasn't going to wait for policies and structures to get up. Time was ticking for me. I needed a different way to get to where I needed to be. It was at that time that my director at that time fell out with her deputy, and there was a master's equivalent of procurement and contracting. I'm a biochemist by background, so go figure. So there's a master's going, and I'm African. I'm not about to turn away an education. So they tried to give it away. Me being the lowest in that team, there was no way they were giving it to me fast, and it only came to a point where nobody could take this master's that they gave it to me. I completed it in record time, and I left the organization and got a job outside that organization, which was five steps higher than what I always was. How did that happen? It's because the lazy leader couldn't refuse that I'd done the work. The lazy leader could give me a reference. The lazy leader knew that I could do it. So there was no way he could actually tell me that I hadn't done it when I had. So what I want to just say to you when I was thinking about what I would bring to you is that, our expectation to thrive in the place by which we operate is a human desire. So to do so, there's an assumption that the place must be fertile. So you place yourself in an organization and you think, I must thrive in this place. And that is correct. However, this story that I tell you, I learned a bigger truth, that it doesn't matter how fertile that place is. You need to understand what you carry in order for you to jump and make sure that you achieve what you need to achieve. The understanding of who we are has the ability to influence and shift the landscape by which we operate. The director in me today was a director in me 20 years ago. But if I hadn't seen that woman that I am today 20 years ago, I wouldn't be where I am. Because I believe that everything that we overcome starts first in our mind. There is a saying that goes that what you water is what you ultimately grow. And you and I, we can only elevate to the level of our dominant thought. I hear this a lot among my migrant siblings, I call them. And they'll be like, you'll never achieve in this place. These people, they do this. And for me, my challenge is if that's the thought that you give, you will never elevate beyond that dominant thought that you have. The ability or the desire I had was, I can do this. That I'm not going to let systems or places or people's opinions about me stop me. Why? Because I understood what I carried. How we see ourselves in the spaces that we're operating will eventually lead to how we are behaving, and ultimately that will teach the space which you're operating how to treat you. I'm going to take creative liberty here and state boldly that the story of the migrant woman cannot be narrowed to a few. Our story of challenge, sadly, is very common and has been experienced by so many of us in here. The million-dollar question I want to ask is, how do you manage to fight and climb simultaneously? For me, fighting and climbing required me to be laser focused. I needed to be clear about where I was standing, but also more importantly, I needed to know where I needed to go. Why do you need to know where you're standing? Because that's the launch pad that will catapult you to where you need to go. Everything in the middle, from where I am to where I need to go, I just call it stuff. The ups and downs, the sorrows, the challenges, stuff. The beauty about stuff, however, challenging it may be, or really yucky it may feel, is that you can convert that stuff into energy that will propel you to where you want to be. The sad reality in life that I've learned is that no matter how well you prepare or perform, you must understand that as a concept, the life is simply not fair. It's not, and that's the truth. Those of us who have been in this career journey that refuse to recognize that this thing will take us down will sooner or later be pulled into a void that makes us project out continuously assigning blame. So if you don't sit there and recognize and accept the fact that life is not fair, whether you're a migrant or not, life is not fair. And if you refuse to recognize that, sooner or later, you'll be pulled into a void that paralyzes you from marching forward to reshape and positively impact you in your leadership, in the landscape, in your world. Listen, I've been in this game for nearly 20 years. I'm telling you my age. It's tough work. And I think Professor was alluding to that. Giving it your all, but not being given the immediate validation that you hoped for. Seeing people who are less qualified, less working than you, being given opportunities and frog leaping you. It's not nice. It's tough. The life drops obstacles before us that we don't feel we're prepared for. It's tough when people around you are getting rewarded or promoted. It's tough for people doing less than what you put in, but still people are marching forward. It's tough. But if you let this disappointment eat you up, it will taint your view of your career. This will eventually close the door to your own self-mastery and self-improvement, opening yourself up to comparison, contrasting, blaming, and stagnation. Trust me, these are things that I did myself, but they are lessons that I learned the hard way. What I didn't realize, though, at that time was that for all the disappointment and all the rejection that I had gone through, I was actually being prepared for the reality of life, preparing me to be a resilient, adaptable fighter and leader that I find myself in today. It was eventually this realization of who I was and exactly what I needed in the purpose was that my purpose was pursued. Everything that I've been through has taught me to expect more from myself. So I want to just encourage you, expect more from yourself than what your world is telling you. There is simply no room for victim mentality in the journey as migrant women that we take. The only way to ensure your own defeat in your career is if you divert responsibility to the outside world. And I need to take a side note here. This is not to say that structures and policies are not important, and Professor alluded to it in her keynote speech. They are important, but then I just want to challenge you. Are you going to wait for those structures and policies, or are you going to find yourself another way? And I say, if the door's not open, climb in through the window. The only sure way to remain powerless is to feel bad for yourself, to feel angry that life hasn't turned out the way it should be, or the way you've watched in the movies. It's hard to hear, but in a perfect world, hard work must be rewarded. But unfortunately, that's not reality. As the saying goes, you cannot blame anyone. You are not to blame for where you start. The prejudice, the biases, the struggle, that you begin with. You cannot be blamed for that. But you didn't choose that hand. But guess what? Where you go from here, that is your responsibility. It is your responsibility to move beyond the cosmic injustice that you cannot do nothing about. You didn't choose to be the woman that you are. Therefore, you cannot take responsibility for that. I learned this again and again and again in my journey. I learned it when I was working on the factory floor in a freezing cold room, putting lemon zest in tarts to be sold in supermarkets at Christmas. I learned this when I was serving hot food at service stations for travelers in coaches. I learned this when I was a care worker, working nights to make ends meet with my husband. I learned this when I was a PA. I learned this in my various contracting law roles. I learned this in my current positions. I am still learning this even as a director. In learning this, I presented myself differently in the space that I was operating. Why? Because I knew myself. It didn't matter what they thought about me. I knew myself, calm, resilient leader. The determinant of my destiny was not the outside world and what they thought about me, but rather the decisions that I took one day at a time. The question I want to ask you, ladies, before I end is this. Do you know where you want to be? Do you know where you want to be? Because what you want exists, it's available. And all your actions and your energy must be focused on energizing that truth. Where do you want to be? That's the important question. Anything or anyone whispering that you're not good enough or that you do not belong, suggesting that you cannot achieve, it's stuff. And I told you this, that I told you what to do with stuff. Can be converted into fuel to propel you into the future. To think out otherwise is to be counterproductive. How does you believing that you're not good enough for that promotion going to help you? How does it help you to get where you want to be? It doesn't. Eliminate that thought. You have to be good enough. There is no other choice. Maybe what you need to ask yourself is, I need to get a mentor. I need to do some self-improvement skills. I need to do some training. There's some women who've logged in today who come to my mentorship. Change your approach. Tackling this thing will propel you forward and progress into what you need to be. I just want to end very quickly here that progress is our responsibility. It starts with how we think. How we think affects how we see ourselves. How we see ourselves will impact how we show up in the spaces that we teach other people. So for me, as a leader currently, I'm still learning. I do not believe by any chance that I have arrived. What I know is that I want to be the leader that nobody gave me a chance to be. When I was growing up in this career level, I got to this point and I looked across and I wished there was a Leah Chilengwe and Amina, Juliana, the people that I could look up to. So for me, I just want to encourage us, ladies, that as we grow, remember that structures and policies may stop you, but the sky is the limit, because everything that you require to be who you need to be is inside of you. When you discover what you have inside of you, what happens very quickly is then you begin to teach the people around you. I was speaking to some people about reverse mentorship. Try and become friends with people of leadership within your organization. The only way you break down barriers is when you break down stereotypes. So for me, I make sure that I just make a beeline, make a friend, make sure that in my leadership roles, I have relationships with people outside just my working environment, because there is no way I can change. It might not change for me, even if it's horizontal, but it will change for the Black migrant person that they manage, because I've broken down that stereotype. So if I was just to give a summary overview of what I wanted to say to us today, it's self-mastery. Understand who you are in order for you to influence the space that you are going through. Yes, policies need to change. Yes, structures need to change. But whilst that's happening, don't be stagnant. There's everything that you require inside of you, and everything inside of you is enough to be who you need to be. I wonder whether that's helped somebody. It's a whistle-stop tour, and I just try to make sure that when I'm speaking, it's very quick. And I know I'm a quick speaker, so I hope that you could capture that in video.